What are we on now?
MNPublicRecords.
All righty.
This is always
getting real.
Yeah, this is always really daunting for me. Like, this is always like I feel a lot of pressure when MNPublicRecords has an info dump, has a court document dump for multiple reasons. Number one, I'm the only guy who's been able to give anybody a bird's eye view of this whole thing. I occupy arguably the most important spot in in the commentary portion of this. Number two, MNPublicRecords releases a lot of information, and I want to give it time. I want to let it breathe. I want the segments to be long. I want them to be thorough. I want the audience to get their jokes in. I want us to get our jokes in, but I also want to do some analysis. I also have this frustrating problem where very loyal, longtime fans don't want to do it. And I always hate being in this position where I have to tell, whether it's co-hosts, whether it's audience members, no matter who it is, I have to respectfully look at them and I have to go, you're wrong. I apologize if you don't like this, but if you don't like this, there is a part of you that doesn't understand what a good show is or doesn't understand what interesting broadcasting is. And every time Nick announces he's doing a show, MNPublicRecords drops a shitload of documents from different hearings. This one is from the Child Protective Services hearing. This is where they get to talk to all the people. I think this is from June. This court thing took place in June. You've got Alicia Sweep makes an appearance, the Child Protective Services director who I've met. Nice lady, great at her job. She's very, very solid. They have a few other people up there. The lawyers get to examine and cross-examine. The judge gets to ask some questions. And we get some interesting tidbits from MNPublicRecords. Now, I'm going to read his summary of the whole thing because trying to take these page by page,
It'll take forever.
It's a lot. Coltrane with $1 says, so you were convinced Nick gave her coke to bring, but you weren't sure. Then how did you know she was running off doing it during the show? I'm going back in time now. I'm thinking back to all of this stuff. Number one, much like when Nick reveled in thumbing his nose at his church by bringing the full cover and the later thruple to the pews. Remember, April and I had been to the church. April was at the church after I had left with all the kids.
Right.
Sure enough, all of the below transpired. All of this CPS stuff happened with April in the gallery as a support, gazing upon the cult leader in awe. Surely that would have inspired a lot of confidence in the county's eyes. Now, that's number one. Let's talk about that. They go over who's in the audience. Right. And you got Nick's parents. You've got the three oldest children, the ones that are over 10 years old. They're here hearing this. Remember that. And then you have April listed as a support in the gallery. Side chick. He brought sister wife to a CPS hearing. Remember, this is the hearing where he's going to go, I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy and I can have my kids back. Give me my kids back because Nick's turned a corner. Nick's all right, even though Nick won't admit he did anything wrong in the first place. But okay. April is there. She's there. She's in attendance. Everybody's been trying to figure out, why did April's felony charges get brought back? Why did the county decide to pursue felony charges against April again? Now, it's my assertion, based on who I've talked to and based on my intimate knowledge of this whole thing, that those charges were coming back no matter what. I think the only thing that could have stopped those charges from coming back is April talking to the detectives, April talking to CPS, and April helping. Then it probably would have all gone away. But she didn't. She shows up at this CPS hearing. People keep bringing up the tattoo thing. Those charges were back in process. They were ready with those charges before the tattoo thing happened. So
yeah, the government doesn't move that quickly.
Right. I think they saw April was still living there. They see April at the CPS hearing and the charges back on. And I think they always were going to put the charges back on. So she shows up at the CPS thing. Now, here's an interesting question. If April shows up at this CPS hearing and she's clearly still there, and she was one of the people that got arrested with them, and now she has 5th-degree felony charges, remember when the CPS, like the list of things they had to do to get the kids back, one of them was be subject to random checks of both houses?
Right.
I wonder now if this CPS thing is going to be dragged out longer because
April's in the mix.
April has to now be considered as someone who needs to test, someone who needs to be checked in on, someone who needs to they got to make sure that she's okay to be around children because she was doing.
Don't worry, Nick said he'll handle that. He'll take care of the testing and checking in on her, make sure she's all right. He'll take care of all that. You don't need to worry about it. That's
what's funny about this whole thing because remember, Nick was cocking off and bragging like, whatever charges April doesn't face, it's because of me. Well, the fact that she's facing charges, isn't that because of you, sweetheart? Hey, if you're going to take the credit, got to take the blame, right?
Yeah.
Well, that would require him being honest and introspective. Not going to happen. So April is there. April is looking on, which everyone I've heard talk about this, that's the craziest part to them. Is they're like, how did you think this was a good idea? I mean, it's dumb enough for you all to be living together still.
Right.
What's she doing here? You and your wife need to have a family again. Like, you need to be together. What the fuck? Nick's probably convinced them, oh, yeah, Aaron was like ground and pounding her, beating the fuck out of her. Aaron was this terrible guy. We're rescuing her. He doesn't believe that. He knows that's horseshit, and I'll call him on it every time. But they don't know that that's bullshit. So he's probably got them sold because, remember, these are the same parents who we're going to see later in these documents don't think that Nick's ever done cocaine.
Oh.
So these are not the most difficult people to fool.
Well, I guess we know where Nick gets his unprecedented level of stupidity from.
I will say this. If I had to rank Rekieta family parents, like the kids' grandparents, Kayla's stepdad's my favorite dude. He's great. I like that guy. Dan's awesome. Dan's a stand-up, no-nonsense guy. Then I would go Kayla's mom, then Nick's dad, Nick's mom. But I think the Rekietas are the perfect example. You know, they have this saying about rich families, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Okay.
Where somebody works really hard and builds something up.
Mm-hmm.
The next generation, they kind of live on it a little, but they're still able to kind of make their own way a little bit. They can stay out of jail. If they go to trial, some of them are going to prison. And they're going to be convicted felons. So you can't have another convicted felon who's not blood related to the kids in the house without putting some stipulations, putting a saddle on them. Honky says April can't show support to her stepkids. Yeah, she didn't even come home the day of Charlotte's birthday party to help get ready. Kayla and I did that. April said, I was out getting Easter baskets for the kids. She ended up getting them those shitty, like $10 prepackaged wicker Easter baskets with like some Butterfingers and shit in them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you weren't like putting them together. You literally walked into Walmart, grabbed 3 of them and got them. That's a 5-minute trip. And then she admitted, she goes, I am in a booth right now at the Chinese restaurant crying my eyes out with Nick. It's like, yeah, because you guys are drug addicts and you can't control your emotions. Because Kayla and I were like,
where the Chinese restaurant?
Well, because Kayla and I were like, where the are you? Like, your daughter, we're getting ready for her 10th birthday party. And you're not here. And you're not here. And I told her earlier that day, be home by 11:30. If you could, because, I need some help getting stuff ready and all that. Kayla ended up coming with her 5 kids. And we ended up getting everybody ready and going. All those 2 retards had to do was bring themselves. So on to highlight number 2 from these document links from MNPublicRecords. Although the maternal grandparents, Kayla's parents, are generally understood to have been the only caregivers, it turns out the 2 youngest children were then actually in the care of another family member and uncles giving respite for unspecified intervals. So I'm guessing one of Kayla's brothers was watching the kids from time to time. For how long and how many times did Nick's choices subject his kids to the trauma of being separated even from each other? That's another thing nobody talks about. Like when he addresses it or anything else, just the like the kids have heard about this stuff. Remember, these 3 of their oldest kids are in the courtroom for all this. As PPP from Keno Casino said, the way he puts it, the kids were stinky and hungry. Well, the laundry's in the bedroom. The wash machine and the dryer are in the bedroom. Kids would come to the bedroom door, and anytime the kids came to the bedroom door and wanted a snack or anything else, like usually me, I would go get it for them or somebody would. But it was most of the time almost always me. Because, 2 or 3 people were in the bathroom doing their thing. And
doing stuff.
So anyway, number 2, maternal grandparents, kids all over the place. Some kids here, some kids there. So far we have April is in the gallery showing support during the CPS hearing. Number 3, and this one broke my heart temporarily to hear. This was a tough one to hear. Number 3 is it's something that how do I put this? When it comes to Kayla, and maybe I'm too easy on Kayla, but Kayla can be a very sweet, loving soul. The thing with Kayla is this. When it comes to drugs and it comes to neglecting children and when it comes to getting better and turning your life around, there's a difference between wanting to and being able to. Kayla has, I can tell you this from experience, 100% fact. Kayla wants to turn it around. Kayla wants to stop all of it. Kayla feels guilt. Kayla is one of the guiltiest people I've ever met. Kayla feels terrible. Kayla does not think this stuff should be happening. Kayla wants to do better. Kayla is not capable of doing better. I offered resources. I offered help. I offered anything I could. Kayla would always talk about wanting to do better, but when it was time to take any actual concrete steps, she would not. Every fight with Nick where she would end up hurting herself, every fight with Nick where she would come back screaming and crying that he gaslights the shit out of her and all that, never did anything. Like, you feel bad for people at some point, but then you kind of get the, the principle from American History X where you ask that question of, has anything I've done made this better? So here we go. Number 3. I had that long setup to get to number 3 because the documents get hard to read. Number 3. For once, there was a brief glimpse of conscience and contrition in Kayla, MNPublicRecords writes. She tearfully hugged her eldest son out in the hallway and said, quote, and this is important, and hopefully this is part of the CPS hearings and the criminal hearings. She tearfully hugged her eldest out in the hallway and said, quote, "These are the consequences of our actions." Now, that should be a big holy shit moment. I was surprised more people didn't take that as the holy shit moment that it is, because I don't think people get it. I don't think people understand. That is the first time anyone not named Aaron has admitted any kind of guilt. And these are the consequences of our actions. MNPublicRecords says, will Nick ever acknowledge the same? No. Number 4. On a lighter note, ooh, you ready for some levity?
Yeah, lighter note. What's lighter?
What's good? On a lighter note, we finally get the comical details about the May 28th first site visit's refusal of access to the master bedroom. Remember, Nick called Alicia Sweep a liar. When Alicia Sweep said, I went through there, I got to the master bedroom, he shut the door on me and wouldn't let me in. Okay. Okay, Nick. Nick, okay. Okay, Nick, okay. Allegedly, Nick shut the door in Sweep's face saying, you don't need to come in here. And you know what I love about this? I can see Nick doing this. This is, thinks he looks like a tough guy Nick. I can see, thinks he's a tough guy Nick face. I can hear, thinks he's a tough guy, stern voice. Nick is one of those people where he wants to be maybe not feared, but he wants that respect of aggression.
Right.
But when Nick gets aggressive, you just want to pat him on the head and go,
that's adorable.
There. You know what you want to do, Johnny? You want to put your hand open, your palm open like this on his shoulder, and you want to look at him and go, do you feel in charge? If Nick ever yells at you, just pinch his cheeks and go, shuka, shuka, shuka. So allegedly, Nick shut the door in Sweep's face and said, you do not need to come in here, because he was only going in there briefly to grab whatever shitty art piece would surely explain away the loose bullets found near his firearm. What or who was in there in that room that he had to hide? Well, I would argue drugs. I would argue that they reloaded, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so what Nick tried to do. So you know how the police found that .22 caliber bullet?
Yeah, the loose bullet casing thing.
Yeah, and people were theorizing that like he was coked out and he was like shooting at varmints. Like
he's just Yosemite Samming around his house?
Yeah, basically they thought he was out shooting. And I was the first one to go, guys, I've never seen, he's not shooting guns in the house. I promise you. I don't know where that came from, but it's not, he's not firing guns in his house. But apparently it fell out of a painting. The bullet was in a painting and it fell out. But I think if you showed Alicia Sweep that picture, she would go, I don't care. Okay, so number 5. So that was just some silly shit,
Okay.
He kept Alicia Sweep out of the bedroom because, well, you need energy to clean. Number 5, an added excuse for refusing access to the master bedroom during the May 28th site visit was that the Rekietas were, quote, on their way to post bond between that 1 p.m. site visit and the Chips hearing later that afternoon. Why such a hurry to post unconditional bond ASAP when they had already been conditionally released? Now, remember, got to go back to the arrest. They were released under their own recognizance, but they had to drug test.
Right.
They couldn't do any drugs. They couldn't do anything like that, and they had to be regularly tested. They didn't want to do that. So they each paid $5,000 to a bail bondsman, so $10,000 total, so they wouldn't have to test. Because, in my opinion, they want to do drugs. That would hurt their criminal case. Now, this is another thing that Chrissy just let him lie about, that she did not confront him about, because he said, well, it's $75 per test. And if we just pay the $10,000, it's a lot cheaper than being tested. And it's like,
I don't know how, dude, you'd have to get tested like every day for a year to.
It's 133 tests. They were in a hurry to post bond because at that Chips hearing, in my opinion, I could be wrong, at that Chips hearing, they were going to release Nick and Kayla's hair follicle drug test. I wouldn't be surprised if he tested positive for an amount that would make a doctor look at it and go, this is life-threatening. He would drink all night during his show. He would come up during breaks in his show and do cocaine. And I know that many times, a lot of times, before April and I left at 4 a.m. to come here and do the show, April was doing coke to wake herself up. But was he doing it while he was driving the kids around?
Probably.
I would be shocked if Nick never did cocaine in between driving his kids around. This is one where I have to be careful. Do I remember specific times where he went? I remember specific times where in between driving the kids places, he went back into that bathroom. Yes. Did I ever see him? You got to remember, I was here doing the show when he was doing a lot of his driving, so I don't
know what was going on.
But there were times where he was driving the kids around and I would be there, and yeah, I saw him go into the bathroom. Don't know what he did, though. Not sure in that case. Number 6, again, Nick can't resist the chance to hear the sound of his own voice despite his own attorney sitting there who is supposed to do the talking. Yeah, now as we get into the hearing stuff, I mean,
just shut up.
I've been through a divorce where you had to, go to court and get all this done. Mm-hmm. You sit there, you let your attorney speak for you. He's the professional. You let him go. And he does a better job of representing you than you would do of representing yourself because you're emotional. Nick decides to pipe up while his attorney's sitting right there because he has to show off for his lady up in the balcony. You know, remember the side piece came to CPS hearings. Kayla was smarter than you on this day. So the lawyer is there, this time taking a simple question of whether the parents have, quote, been cooperating with drug testing as his time to belt out objection. The client yelled out objection. Whether or not the parents have been cooperating with drug testing. Objection to the introduction of the drug test evidence that wasn't even the call of the question. So he objected to the drug test evidence being released when that's not even what they were doing. If panicking at the thought of ever discussing the parents' own hair follicle tests on May 30th, for which they'd swiftly revoked consent to release results to any county officials, and which their later July 13th motion sought to suppress altogether for the sole reason that the guardian ad litem, the advocate for the kids, shouldn't have gotten her hands on the results. This time, the different judge was having none of it and asked Nick's attorney whether she'd like to make an objection for him. Number 7, leaving aside the parents' May 30th hair follicle test. God, a lot of people want to see the body cam footage, of the arrest, which I don't really need.
You want the follicle test.
Right.
Well, you don't need to. You know what's on that footage. Yeah. You've been there.
I know what that house looks like. I think the last time I was there was a couple weeks after I was done because Kayla had me come over for a second and then we went out. I picked her up at the house. That was the funniest, man. When, because Kayla wanted to still, have a connection after I left. And I go there and I'm waiting for Kayla and Nick comes home and Nick walks by me and he goes, "Hey," and I go, It was just, "I hate you. I'm going to lift your wife up and press her against your truck and make out with her aggressively for a while." Excuse me. I have shit to attend to, sir. That was weird. That was, we were making out behind their, big van and Nick came out to throw the garbage out and saw us. And I'm like, oh God, this is so fucking weird. It was strange. 7, leaving aside the parents' May 30th follicle test with the result that they've aggressively tried to bury ever since. Sure enough, their first urine results were handed to the state at the last minute in the hallway before the hearing. So, remember, cocaine stays in urine for what, 24 to 48 hours? 1 to 2 days, so about 24 hours. Cocaine stays in your urine. So all you got to do is not do coke for 24 hours and you can piss clean.
He threw out all the booze. I thought we were done clean living.
Say that again, Johnny.
He threw out all the booze. And he said he got rid of all the booze. He got rid of everything.
He said that when? How soon after getting out of jail did he say he threw away all the booze?
I think like his first stream that he came back on.
First stream back. His first urine tests were handed to the state at the last minute in the hallway, which even then still tested positive for alcohol almost 2 weeks after the arrest, meaning he was drinking that morning. Alcohol can be detected in urine 3 to 5 days via the ethyl glyceride test or 10 to 12 hours via the traditional method. Well, this was the traditional method. So if he's got alcohol in his urine, and this is, say, 2 in the afternoon, that means at the earliest he was drinking at 2 in the morning. But more likely he was drinking in the morning and the afternoon. Number 8. Again, Kandiyohi County Health and Human Services insisted that the agency still continue to supervise visits because both sets of grandparents have lived whatever incredibly sheltered existence it would be to, quote, be unfamiliar with what somebody under the influence looks like. And more oddly, because at least Nick's parents still did, quote, these are Nick's parents, unlike Kayla's. Remember, Kayla's family helped get them arrested. 42 years old. I stood there at the door while his dad goes, "Do your fucking taxes." It was like a little kid being lectured because Nick's like, "I will, God." A man in his 60s, probably his late 60s, having to tell his 42-year-old son, do your taxes. He even said, do your taxes. That's why I'm up here. I think Daddy Rekieta probably came up to watch the kids because he watched them all that week. That's why, I picked up the tab at dinner as a thank you, because you thank your friends for watching your goddamn kids. So, it was like, well, thank you for giving, I paid the tab because I was like, this gave me a lot more time to spend time and hook up with your daughter-in-law, so I really appreciate that. There you go. Nick's parents, quote, do not believe that Mr. and Mrs. Rekieta used any type of substance in the first place, such that some sort of facilitator would need to babysit both sets of grandparents through use recognition education, brushing up on what you or I might call basic common sense. Number 9. All right, we're getting to the end of this. There's 3 more points. Number 9. Another testament to Nick's Herculean work ethic can be found in the fact that he, Kayla, and the live-in nanny must not have been enough to clean the disgusting house so hard to walk around without stepping on clothing, bedding, and blankets on their own, because it turns out this is embarrassing.
This is in the CPS report, by the way.
This is in the CPS hearing. This is in court.
Oh, it's in the hearing.
Yeah. This house was disgusting. The carpets, like I said, the carpets are stained and blackened. They need to be ripped up and replaced in the entire house, especially in the basement. Just full of garbage, wrappers, old papers, just shit, broken toys. Just shit. And then the upstairs is nothing but dirty clothes, and then nothing but clean clothes in the living room. There's nowhere to sit down. It turns out that the poor grandparents had to do much, if not all of the cleaning for them. 42 years old and a 40-year-old stay-at-home mother and a 29-year-old poke toy nanny. I mean, honestly,
and you guys needed the grandparents to do the laundry.
You're 42 years old and mommy and daddy, let's let this sink in. Mommy and daddy had to come clean your house for you. And your parents don't think you were on coke? Your parents don't think you did drugs? When April and I first started hanging out there, we looked at that basement and we were disgusted. And this is the difference between April before drugs and April after drugs. Because April before drugs, her and I had a plan to clean the Rekieta home and get them to help us clean the Rekieta home because it was disgusting. When April and I went there, we were disgusted by their house and disgusted by their inability to keep a home. But as soon as April started doing booger sugar, she stopped giving up about what that house looked like. There was one day I remember that we were doing laundry. And it was April and I trying to get Nick to do laundry. Kayla was running the kids around somewhere. And we got a few loads of laundry in. And that's as far as it went. No laundry ever after that. I mean, we didn't put a dent in the fun. But I remember being down there with Kayla and April. Nick wouldn't come down. And I was teaching them how to clean their fucking basement. I go, Kayla, break this room down into grids. Because she's like, look, it's such a big mess. There's so much shit. And I told her, I said, break the room into grids. Break it into squares and clean each.
Do one part and then move to another part.
Make that square clean and then move to the next square. And I probably got 2 or 3 squares on the grid clean. And I go, you see how that works? She goes, yeah, we can do that. And then once my wife got drugs in her, man, she didn't give a clean in that house anymore. So then mommy and daddy had to come in and clean the house only after they got arrested. They would have never cleaned that house. Ever.
Right. Even under all this court stuff, they would have never gotten it done?
Never. And even then, there was a noted failure to remove any residual exposure to cocaine by wiping every surface down with bleach. Which, I mean, if you live in a trap house and you've got to clean it up, you have to bleach all the surfaces because you don't know what's on there.
Right.
I mean, if he's willing to do a line of coke off of my kitchen counter after I told him not to, he's more than willing to do it off his own. Now, when it came down to selecting the appropriate cleaning protocol, the Rekietas refused to even so much as discuss what substance was there. CPS people are trying to say, did you clean all the cocaine off these surfaces with bleach? And they had the balls to go, what cocaine? So they are riding we didn't have cocaine in our house all the way to what? Trial? Do you go to trial, you're going to prison. We got 2 more of these. Number 10, as reiterated in later case plans, Sweep elaborates on Health and Human Services safety meeting attempt to plan around drug use, having been hampered by the parents having stated they do not want to answer any questions regarding that. So she's trying to say, if we're going to bring your kids back, we got to talk about drug use and we got to talk about the consequences of that and all that. And they're like, we're not talking about that because we don't do drugs. And Health and Human Services, having been unable to do any safety planning around the children returning because they had not been able to establish sobriety or establish how these substances were found and gotten to the home in the first place. Nick's been saying the kids are coming home. You know, he's using it. He's trying to own the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Best case, the kids aren't coming home. What's going to start happening is, maybe after August 12th, is that the kids will be allowed to be brought to the house for supervision.
Yeah.
That is not the same as the kids are coming. The kids are coming home, Mr. Technicality, shitty lawyer guy. We all speak the commonality of language. We know what that means is that your children now live with you full time all the time. That's what the kids are coming home means. Number 11, and this is the last one, as reiterated in the July 13th motion, the defense seemed to have given up on outright reunification and pushed instead for having the grandparents move into the Rekieta's home, which Health and Human Services also found unacceptable, in part because foster care in the home from which the children were removed and would be ineligible for foster parent licensure. And moreover, because of hampered safety planning around Mr. and Mrs. Rekieta's access to that home. And lack of a plan of how their access to the home would be restricted, even if they were to move to the second residence. Well, mom and grandma and grandpa can't move to the other residence.
April's living there.
April's living there. And the second house has not yet been inspected to see if it would be safe. And that was so close as to let the parents have access to the children unsupervised. What were these pesky county prudes so afraid of? Now, the best part about this is MNPublicRecords did not release the full hearing. So the next time Nick streams,
we get the rest of the hearing.
We get the rest of it.